Did you see the latest? So Aaron Rodgers was interviewed by Nepo baby Tucker Carlson, and it went about as well as one would think.
When you step into this, you personally, when I'm talking about you, when you stepped into this realm, you were the number one anchor at the number one show nightly, and the stuff you were taking on, and then the way that you were ousted there, and then you go to X, and you're the interviews you're doing, the numbers you're going, then you go and interview Putin. Like, you're putting yourself in harm's way. And I commend you just like I commend Bobby Kennedy.
Okay, let's pause here. First off, Rodgers, being this big do my own research guy, can't even come to terms that Musk's platform inflates views, in effect leading to great exaggeration. What constitutes a view, for example, is quite important. A data point that Musk and Carlson cling to is, my Trump interview got 250 million views. Oh my God, we're so popular. Mashable's Matt Binder, a comrade of the fine folks at Majority Report, found the deceitful nature of Musk's approach to be quite simple. Views has been paraded as the be-all, end-all when video views is the key metric. Tucker's Trump interview did 230 million views, they claimed, when in reality, per Binder, the video itself was actually played only 14.8 million times for at least 2 seconds of the more than 46-minute interview, or just over 6% of the total 236 million times someone saw the post on X. Secondly, this thought of Carlson being in grave danger. Oh my God, you're such a patriot. You took such a huge risk. Oh my God, you must be fearing for your lives. Come on, man. You know who's in harm's way? College kids protesting on their campuses for universities to divest APEC outing students via trucks rolling through with the names plastered on each side. I mean, that's danger, and that is just one example of many. A mega millionaire interviewing a mega billionaire who runs a humongous country. Really?
I'm just trying to do my best. And I was fighting a lot of battles, when I tested positive for COVID and got canceled or attempted. And I don't feel like I need to fight as much.
Let's pause here, because this is a dude since the year 2021 that has been kicking and screaming about cancel culture, and yet simultaneously has appeared on the number one sports show in media, the Pat McAfee Show. He continually gets airtime, and now he's on Carlson's show, which he already said is massive, along with other conspiracy theory riddled programs.
What about you, though? Because you did one of the most controversial, somehow, not to me, most controversial interviews in the last, I don't know how long, when you went to Russia and did Putin. How did it feel coming back? Because like anybody who watched the interview was like, number one, it was awesome. Number two, Putin came off as an interesting, thoughtful, smart individual.
Where to even begin? First off, Tucker Carlson's interview was critiqued rightfully for his softball style. Even local journalists in the country said Tucker's pro-Putin accusations were baseless. Tucker even laid off Putin's regime, which has a history of unaliving media members, imprisoning them, and censoring them. Historians say the litany of claims made by Putin are nonsense, representing nothing more than a selective abuse of history to justify the ongoing war in Ukraine. Sergei Radchenko, a historian at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, would go off on Putin, saying the leader is trying to construct a narrative that is backwards, where he states Russia, as a state, began its development in the 9th century. You could equally say that Ukraine, as a state, began its development in the 9th century, exactly with the same kind of evidence and documents. He's trying to use certain historical facts to construct a state-centered narrative that would favor Russia, as opposed to any alternative agglomerations. Another falsehood of many that was spewed in this interview between two knuckleheads was this. Putin claimed that Poland, which was invaded by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union in 1939, collaborated with Hitler. He said by refusing to cede an area of Poland, calling the Danzig corridor to Hitler, Poland went too far, pushing him to start World War II by attacking them. Anita Przemowska, a professor emerita, would rebuke this, saying that there were diplomatic contacts between Poland and the Nazis. The first treaty Hitler signed after coming to power was a non-aggression pact with Poland in 1934. Putin is conflating diplomatic outreach to a threatening neighbor with collaboration. The accusation that the Poles were collaborating is nonsense, she would add. I think the question is this. Why is Aaron Rodgers falling for Vladimir Putin propaganda? Ask yourself that question.
You had the live case numbers. You had just the fear mongering. And then anybody that stood up to it was canceled. All the Twitter files that got released when Elon took over that show the collusion between the alphabet companies.
First off, him saying the alphabet companies is different than what he said previously, which was the alphabet mob, which had a direct correlation and a bullhorn of a whistle to say that you are anti-gay rights. I suppose it's somewhat of a positive, if we're splitting hairs here, that he corrected himself. However, referencing the Twitter files as a source, let's revisit. It was promoted by Musk to Bari Weiss, an idiot, and the like, to put out an idea that showed Twitter's bias against conservatives as well as interference by the U.S. government to censor certain posts and users. When in reality, the released info showed former Twitter employees engaging in fairly even-handed, basic content moderation found on almost any social media. Nevertheless, Elon curated the narrative and broke through with conservatives and his fans. There were even congressional hearings held. Remember those? Where former employees shared just how much was missing from Musk's chosen documents. Rodgers once again is proving how dense his approach is. When discussing his guy RFK, he said this.
He's spending millions of his own dollars on private security, which he has to because he's a threat, because he's not, bought and paid for.
All right, hang on. He's not bought and paid for? Do we understand the legalized bribery that happens in this country in the form of campaign donations? As a matter of fact, RFK's biggest donor is the biggest donor to Donald Trump. Per Newsweek, Timothy Mellon, the heir to the Mellon banking fortune, gave a Trump-aligned super PAC $5 million, plus the same figure to an RFK-aligned super PAC. His VP, Nicole Shanahan, a wealthy tech entrepreneur and lawyer, donated $4 million to a pro-RFK Jr. super PAC in efforts to fund a Super Bowl ad. But hey, keep politics out of sports. The New York Times reported dozens of VCs, tech execs, real estate builders, investors with varying political alliances contributed to RFK's PACs. Patrick Byrne, the former chief executive of Overstock and one of the most prominent supporters of the effort to overturn the 2020 election, gave $100,000 in Bitcoin to Common Sense, another PAC supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Abby Rockefeller, let's continue, why not? A daughter of the investment banker David Rockefeller, who runs a cannabis farm in upstate New York, gave $100K to American Values 2024 PAC. Then there's Gavin DeBecker, who also donated to a pro-Kennedy PAC. His security firm has been paid $1.5 million by Kennedy's campaign. Becker has reportedly provided security for A-list celebs like Cher and Jeff Bezos. One thing Rodgers will undoubtedly cling to is, he doesn't need it. He can fund himself. And that's a great thing because that's the moral way to do it. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Saying that there is no corruption because someone can benefit from their own wealth misses the reality that wealthy candidates typically already represent a special interest. The business and industry that got them or their parents rich, wrote the Brennan Center. More generally, studies show that the affluent have different policy views than most Americans. For example, they unsurprisingly tend to oppose higher taxes on the wealthy. Additionally,
but I don't know if you saw this, but Bobby recently came out and said in the summer months at some point, he wants to do a 50-state poll with like 20,000, I don't know what the exact number is, votes in each of these states. And whoever polls lower between him and Joe Biden has to drop out of the race. Because in his own analytics, he's found out that if the three of them run, Trump is most likely to win. If he goes against Trump, he wins. If he goes against Biden, he wins. If Biden goes against Trump, Trump wins. So in fact, so he said, hey, listen, I'll drop out if you poll higher than me in these 50 states. But if I pull higher than you, you're out.
What fantasy land are we living in here? For real. For real. Here's more.
Bobby's a main player in this.
Let's play this clip one more time. And it's of Michael Flynn, Steve Bannon, and others who will dispel this in their own words.
I'm a great admirer of Robert Kennedy. He's a friend of mine.
Wow. I am a fan of Bobby Kennedy, so I want people to know that. I actually look at him, and I think he's one of those, like, I actually think I have a lot in common with him because I'm a former Democrat. I just changed my party affiliation 2 years ago.
If I were a Democrat, I'd certainly vote for him. If I had any money, I'd send him a contribution, but I don't.
I think RFK Jr. is doing a great service to our country. I am disappointed that his party is so corrupted. I mean, he's the perfect example of a true American Democrat, a true patriot who loves this country.
I think he is potentially an extraordinarily attractive candidate. At the end of the day, however, I believe that his candidacy may serve the purpose of softening Joe Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee is for the candidacy and defeat by the man who will clearly be, no matter what the courts do, the Republican nominee for president, Donald J. Trump.
Son, your boy is playing spoiler. He is the foil. Stop the cap. They are telling you right now that he is in the race to help Donald Trump win. One of the members of his campaign staff was seen in an uncovered video that they were indeed playing spoiler to ruin Joe Biden's chances in order for Donald Trump to take the presidency. This man is not a big brain thinker. He is a big idiot. I am amazed at the things we have learned about this guy since COVID, because I truly believe he, like many, have had their brains wrecked by falling down 1,000,001 rabbit holes, and it changed them completely, unfortunately. We all have that one person, friend, family, work friend, associate, boss, doesn't matter. We all have someone in our lives who we have noticed a seismic internal shift after the coronavirus pandemic, where everything they started to believe could be fact-checked into oblivion and were blatant lies. Yet Rodgers, because of his status, now a Putin apologist, who ran out to start this NFL season with an American flag, is now telling you once again exactly who he is.